Hello everyone and welcome to another Star Wars figure review. Today we're going to take a look at another Clone Wars vehicle, and this time around it's the attack cycle with General Grievous. Once again, like the Republic Scout Speeder that I just reviewed, this once again really defines the mini-rig concept as it brings to life sort of a larger vehicle, but again on a smaller scale. This is very reminiscent to, if you remember it, the Grievous wheelbike that was released in the Revenge of the Sith line. Obviously it was much bigger, had the big claws on either side, and I actually have it knocking around in my collection somewhere, but I didn't have it to hand for this review to compare. But this is obviously just a much smaller version of it, and a more animated, stylised version as well. Very cool though, definitely one of my favourites, and I'll talk about why that is in just a moment. So before we do, we're going to take a look at the box that this one comes in. Once again, same style packaging as all the other Class 1 fleet vehicles. On one end of the box you've got a sinister image of Grievous wielding a lightsaber, and then on the other side you have Grievous inside the attack cycle. The diorama in the back I believe depicts Seleucami, which is obviously one of the planets that Grievous appears on during the Clone Wars, particularly in the Hunt for Grievous and Deserter episodes. And then on the back we have a rundown of all the features of the vehicle, description up top, and the rest of the vehicles available in this range. Obviously the Scout Speeder's seen in review, and next up is Castus with the speeder bike and the Separatist droid speeder as well. So there we go, that's the packaging. And once again, since this is a Clone Wars product, it does indeed come with a battle game card and a display stand. There's the card with Grievous on the top, and the display stand is the same as all the others we've seen in the line so far. So there we go. Onto the vehicle. As I said, this is basically just a scaled down version of the Grievous wheelbike that was released for the Revenge of the Sith line. Quite a few differences there. First and foremost, and the most disappointing in my opinion, is the fact that the wheel itself, which obviously makes up most of this vehicle, doesn't actually rotate. It doesn't move at all, unlike the Grievous wheelbike. The only way to get this thing to move around is by the wheels on either side, which I think is a little bit cheap in my opinion. It just looks weird when it's rolling around, because obviously you'd expect the wheel itself to be moving, so I'm a little bit disappointed with that. On the original Grievous wheelbike, both sides of the wheel rotated at the same time, so you got this really cool looking effect with it, so that's quite disappointing. The cannons on either side of the attack cycle do not fire missiles, they're just there for decoration. So the only real features that this vehicle has is the wheels on the bottom, and also these small clips on either side which allow you to contain a electropole or staff or whatever they're called. Can't remember the name off the top of my head, but the staffs that the MagnaGuards use, that can be clipped in there. And then on the other side you have one for Grievous's lightsaber, which is pretty cool. The lightsaber as well is a completely new sculpt from what I can tell. Never seen this before on any other figure, so if you have, do let me know. And then the Grievous figure that is included, as you can see, can sit inside the attack cycle really nicely. Looks very, very cool. But from what I can tell, the Grievous figure that is included is brand new. I actually thought he was just a retooled version of the basic carded Grievous that we saw with all the battle damaged parts and stuff, but actually it seems that this figure is completely new. It feels a lot sturdier and a lot thicker, like it's made of a more hardened plastic, and it actually reminds me of one of the Force Battlers figures because he's got this really chunky look to him. But one of the main problems that I saw with the original basic carded Grievous was the fact that these shoulder plates were actually very loose, and the slightest little flick and they'd fall off, whereas they're actually stuck down on this one. And that's why I thought it was just a repaint or a retool version, because I thought these had just been glued in place. but as I'm looking more at the figure, the chest plate isn't removable and the legs feel a lot sturdier, as do the forearms, and it just appeared to me that this was a completely brand new figure. And when you compare it side by side with the original Grievous, that becomes more and more apparent. He has all the same articulation though: ball jointed neck, ball hinged shoulders, elbows, swivel forearms. There's no articulation in the torso there. He also has ball hinged hips, ball hinged knees and ball hinged ankles. It's a very nicely articulated figure, and since he's been resculpted ever so slightly, he can hold the weapons a lot better without the aid of a elastic band. So that's Grievous, and that's the attack cycle. As I said, a very cool vehicle. Like with the land speeder that I reviewed a couple of videos back, this in my opinion is more of an aesthetic vehicle. It's more for display and looking nice rather than it is to be played with, and to have tons of features and firing missiles and to be really sort of an action-packed vehicle. But as I said, the aesthetic of it and the overall look of the vehicle is one of those things that again makes up for the lack of features. Another thing I forgot to point out as well is that the handlebars inside, or the controls inside the vehicle, can be rotated so you can place Grievous in any position that you see fit. But this is a really cool little vehicle, one that I was really excited about picking up, and one that looks great in a display. So definitely pick it up if you can. So if you enjoyed this review, and I'll be back with a couple more Clone Wars reviews for you next, so stay tuned for those, and until next time, keep collecting, and may the Force be with you.